the pros and cons of and realities of working on multiple plots. So yeah, I mean, working on multiple plots has some pros. I would say those pros, I've got a bigger perspective on this now because I've been around on different farms and seen way beyond my urban farm, and I've seen many other urban farms. There's a lot of variability with the kind of neighborhood you're in and all that. One of the biggest advantages to multiple plots, as was in my experience, and which I really wrote about in my book, is I was in a fairly friendly neighborhood and friendly neighborhoods, I should say, where every place I had a plot, I knew all the neighbors around. So it really allowed me to build social equity, which all came back in droves for the business itself. So that lent itself to marketing very well. And I had really good relationships with my landowners. The downside is it's a pain in the ass to move back and forth. That's just the reality of it. Certainly the larger you can get, it's certainly more advantageous to have less plots that are larger than more plots that are smaller. I remember when I was first getting into urban farming, I was really keen, and before I planted anything, I mean, this was the fall of 2008. So that's 12 years ago now. Man, has it been that long? Was it the fall of 2008 or the fall of 2009? Anyways, whatever. The year that I was setting up my first urban farm plot, I was just researching. I basically set myself up from the last year of tree planting. I had a bit of buffer with some money. I had 14 grand saved. That was enough to start my business, and I didn't even spend all that money. That winter, I did just a lot of research, but also just reached out to farmers and just offered value, hey, can I come help you on the farm for a couple days or two or whatever? I just visited places. And I remember I went to go, and one of the first urban farms I ever visited, besides from my bike tour, because my bike tour before I started farming, I visited a guy in Santa Cruz or Santa Rosa. I forget what this farm is called, but the first place I visited in Vancouver was this guy named Craig Highway. Really cool dude. Pedal powered urban farm, was one of my original inspirations for starting. He had an urban farm in Vancouver with 20 urban plots, and they were small. They were 500 square feet at best. And it was insane. It was an absolute logistical nightmare. And I don't think he lasted. He didn't take long till it closed, actually. It's just not sustainable. It's too much transit time. And that just eats up your day. Whereas if you're on one site, your day is focused on getting the tasks done. Whereas when you're multi-locational and you're bouncing around, you eat a lot of time up in just traveling around. So that's ineffective. That's a waste. That's wasted, unproductive time that you're not seeing a return for. So that's the biggest downside of it. One of the other advantages is the pests. On my urban farm, I never really had big pest problems because of that. Because I could kind of bounce around from plot to plot, I could avoid problems. If I had a block of arugula planted at a plot, sometimes I'd be half of a plot would be arugula, and then the next succession would be another crop of arugula. And flea beetles started to become a problem there. Well, then I didn't have to plant arugula at that plot for the rest of the season. I could just put it somewhere else. And so that gave me a really big edge, because I was able to grow a crop like that, which most other farmers in my region don't grow because of flea beetle pressure. Even with netting, it can be a challenge. And so that was solely because I was multi-locational. So there's advantages there. The other advantage is that I'm just reiterating stuff in the book. I won't go on for too much longer, because unless I'm going to add something that I didn't mention in the book, you have the book, so you're going to get all the questions there. But that's really mostly what I can think about now. One thing kind of in conclusion to that is, looking back, I don't have any regrets. I'm glad I did everything the way I did, because it allowed me to create a style of agriculture that hadn't been as developed as it was. Like I wasn't the first guy to do multi-plot urban farming, not at all. But I put a lot of things together in my book that nobody had done before. And so I'm glad that I did it that way. If I had to start an urban farm again tomorrow, I would get one site, because I think the pros of having a single site greatly outweigh the pros that you'd get from multiple plots. And mostly that comes down to just the logistics of the work. And in my earlier years, when I had a lot of plots, because when I started, I took every plot I was offered, and I was running around on my bike everywhere, and it was insane. I was working 16, 18, 20-hour days in the summers, and it just wasn't sustainable. I didn't have children then. I didn't have a solid relationship then, so I kind of made it work, but it was torture. And it also depends on the city too. One more thought here, and I don't think I put this in the book, is it depends on the city. A town like Kelowna that I live in, and towns that are, call it less than 300,000 people, generally the plots, the lots where the homes are wider space. They're bigger, right? Like in Kelowna, the quarter-acre lots are very common. Toronto, forget about it. 1/10 of an acre lots. I've got a good friend of mine, Jesse Najau, who's farming in Toronto, and his plots are small, and so they got to bounce around. And so, especially inner city. See, my opinion has changed a lot with inner city. Like I'm talking, dense urban farms, like dense urban centers, places like Boston. I visited the urban farming, what are they called? I've done a video with them in the past, maybe even two, the urban farming cooperative or something in Boston, nonprofit, but it's spread out all over the place, and the lots are small. They've got some nice, like vacant lots where they have a decent amount of production on. But I find the bigger the city, the more logistically challenging it is. So I think this is where urban agriculture is there's going to be two types of urban agriculture. And let's say for the sake of the discussion, there already is. There's suburban and peri-urban agriculture, and then there's urban agriculture. So one could say that I mistitled my book. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to go back to my publisher and demand that we change the title of my book, 6-7 years later. Forget it. It's the urban farmer. I'm the urban farmer. Like no turning back. But in reality, that's what it is. My farming was actually more suburban, and some of my plots were even peri-urban. They're urban as far as the way the city of Kelowna classifies urban. Right where I'm sitting right here, I am in the urban center of Kelowna, according to their classifications. But if you pull the lens back and then you look at different types of cities, and then you compare the suburbs of a city like Boston or Seattle or Vancouver or whatever, those suburbs are going to look more like the urban area of Kelowna. So it's kind of nuanced, and it is what it is. But so there's going to be the urban and peri-urban farms, and then there's the urban farms, which are the vertical hydroponic, aquaponic, warehouse type farms. Those are I don't want to say those are the real urban farms, but those are the urban farms, because you just can't really grow in the soil that effectively in an urban center. Like, there's absolutely exceptions. Soul Food Farm in Vancouver is an exception, but Soul Food's also an anomaly because they've been granted land by the city, and because they're a nonprofit, they can get that. So that's not really that accessible to most people, and that's okay. That's their context. That works, right? They deliver product to the area, and they do a good thing, and they do great work. But it's not common that you're going to see that. So the common urban farms are going to be these high-tech urban, indoor warehouse type. I've visited a variety of them in my microgreens farm visits, and then you've got the peri-urban and suburban farms like mine. which I visited a number of too. You know, Stephen Cornett, same thing. He's on the outskirts of San Diego. Lemon Grove, you know, that suburb is similar to my downtown of Kelowna.